It's time to accelerate. Hey friends, this is Andy. Welcome to episode 622 of Accelerate, the sales podcast of record. I am honored to be joined on the show today by my guest. Joining me on the show is Derek Wyszynski. Now, at the time we recorded this conversation with Derek, he was the chief sales hacker at ZynBit, and he has since moved on. He's now a mentor at the GrowthX Academy and a founding member of the Sales Enablement Society. Now, if you run an inside sales team or you're part of an inside sales team, you're going to find this very interesting conversation because Derek and I talk about what he feels are the inherent weaknesses in the conventional SDR/account exec sales model. And then he goes into detail about alternate sales structures and alternate sales processes that he's implemented that put the buyer front and center. It's not the process that's front and center, it's the buyer who's front and center. And in the process, creating a more positive and effective buying experience for the prospect, which should lead to a higher conversion rate. So, I think it's always very important to challenge the status quo around sales processes and sales models, try new things. Derek's done that, and it's led to a very interesting conversation you'll want to stick around for. If you'd like to see the show notes for this episode, go to andypaul.com/622. And before I talk with Derek, as always, let me remind you, if you haven't signed up yet, to receive my periodic emails, then I think you are missing out because I save some of my absolutely best advice about sales, leadership, marketing, relationship building, resilience, and character and values for my subscribers. So visit andypaul.com right now to subscribe. All right, time to listen to my conversation with Derek. Derek Wyszynski, welcome to Accelerate.
Well, thank you so much, Andy. It's great to be here.
Well, pleasure to have you here. So I have a standard opening question I ask my guests, and that is, in your opinion, what's the single biggest challenge facing sales reps today?
The single biggest challenge facing sales reps today is selling the informed customer. I think that, when I started back in the industry, when I started in B2B sales, the salesperson was the primary engine of information between the customer and the solution. I worked for Xerox, so my customers didn't know anything about copiers before I walked in the door, and I was a copier expert. I knew speeds and feeds. I knew the way workflows were in the office. I knew everything there was to know about the technology, and I was an information resource for my clients. And because of that, and because my clients needed the ability to communicate to me, to understand, to realize, to recognize what the new technology was and why they needed it, that gave me an audience to utilize my persuasive skills to persuade them to my brand of copier. In today's world, that information, since Al Gore invented the internet, there's no reason for a salesperson to be communicating knowledge that way. Someone who communicates, and let's take a look, we could look at Xerox, we could look at software, we could look at hardware, any large ticket item. The research that is being done prior to communication for the salesperson is astronomically different than it was 20 years ago. And you're dealing with a customer now that has a spreadsheet of 3 or 4 different vendors, of 3 or 4 different products, all the pluses and minuses. Maybe they've went to third-party review sites. They've taken a look at all the competitors in a space. And by the time they reach out to a salesperson, or a salesperson somehow reaches out to them, they're not interested in persuasion. They're interested in proof. And I think that, the biggest issue is we're still training salespeople to be persuaders and not provers, and we're training salespeople to go ahead and utilize the persuasive talent versus providing a proof source engine that a client can look and say, yes, your widget is superior to B widget and C widget, and this is why I'm going to go with you.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. All right. There's almost too much to unpack there. So one thing is I sort of come back to it, and that because this conversation, I do a lot of these interviews, and we ask this question, and people have answers somewhat similar to what you had. But one thing that is sort of interesting is we talk about this informed customer as if this is a current phenomenon. But the fact is, it's not, right? We're 20 years deep into the internet right now. So isn't new. So why do you think that everybody still talks like this is a revelation, that we've got these informed customers and that salespeople are no longer the source of all information? Because, granted, I started probably before you did selling, mainframes and big mini computers for bureaus, and similar training to what you had at Xerox, and those were different days, right? We were the fount of all information, but that stopped being the case almost 2 decades ago. So I'm wondering why we still think this is not why we think it's an issue, why it is still an issue. Why haven't we learned? Why aren't we doing things differently so it's not this way?
Well, I think listen, I think there's a lot to be said about the industry that has grown around sales training, sales enablement. A lot of it has to do with the fact that again, I'm not here to slap the food out of anybody's mouth, but there's a lot of people out there that are making a lot of money. Telling people, not necessarily telling people what they want to hear, but training and providing knowledge and insight that is conducive to preconceived notions. And again, I can tell you by,
that's called selling people what they want.
Exactly. And when you sell, and when you sell people what they want, when you're dealing in the sales world, and this is the issue. So if I'm selling people what I want or what they want, and I'm selling ERP systems, or I'm selling something to the effect of maybe airplane parts for Boeing or something else. I'm selling the customer what they want because they want a certain thing. They want the software to do this. They want, because they need, their end result is not sales. But in the sales enablement world, we've kind of created this snake that eats itself, where it's like we want to believe that hustle, hard work, grit, we make a lot of calls, we're able to go ahead and affect the change. We can turn the person. All we need is a meeting, and once we have the meeting, we can go ahead and convince them to go our way. That belief is almost sacrosanct within the sales community. At least it has been for a long period of time. And a lot of current VPs of sales and sales directors and even first-line sales managers believe that. So those are the books they buy. That's the sales training they incorporate, because they want to believe that. They want to believe what they did 20 years ago can still work today. And again, this is just, your mileage may vary for those people that are listening out here. But in the world of if you're selling to salespeople, giving them what they want gives us the result that we have. And the problem is the people that sell to salespeople, those secondary customers are our customers, what I call customer squared. Not my customer, but the customer they're selling to are getting the short shrift because they're not interested. They know what they want. They need a widget. They need a thing to go ahead and help them. They need an airplane part. They need the ERP software. They're not interested in this whole sales process that we've created for ourselves. This whole kind of way of communicating. So what happens is the customers of our customers shut down. They don't answer the phone. They don't answer the emails. They don't listen to the outreach that we've been crafting. And then it's a big surprise because because no one then understands why. Well, if everyone within the sales enablement space is telling us to do this, why isn't it working with these second level customers, with our particular customers? And I think that's part and parcel because we've crafted the communication in sales enablement to be by and for salespeople, which we're a very small part of the commerce, solution within business right now.
Well, but and I'm not disagreeing at all. It isn't part of the issue that we have is that, at least in quote unquote modern sales organizations, that there's somewhat of a fixation on the technology to make you more effective, but the technology is all inward facing and not outward facing.
Well, yes, exactly. I do believe there's a lot of technology out there to give you inward information, whether whatever KPIs or metrics you're measuring within your CRM in order to supposedly give you data. But there's very, very little information out there that actually gets salespeople in front of clients and understanding what their clients want. Case in point, I have, not a particular bone to pick, but the practice of SDR.
This is a great place for it.
Well, the practice of SDRs, so the practice of sales development reps. I, for the life of me, someone who truly believes that prospecting is the most important part of the sales process, yes. I have no idea why many organizations outsource that most important part of the relationship to your least experienced representative, to the person that knows the least about the industry, the least about the solution, the least about of the competitive landscape. If I were designing a sales which I have for ZynBit, but if I've designed a sales process from scratch, my most influential, my most insightful, my most senior people would be my outreach people. And I would set them loose unto the world, and they could, and they would go ahead and create the processes and the outreach that they feel would go ahead and bring the leads in.
And you've done this
yes.
At ZynBit? So, yes. So what's your sales structure look like?
What our sales structure looks like, if we have an outbound sales structure where myself and a few others create content. It's basically demand generation, and by creating the demand, we bring people into certain media avenues, whether it be our website, whether it be our Twitter feed, whether it be our LinkedIn. We bring people in that way. Once they connect with us on a content basis, they like something I post, they retweet something, there's multiple avenues to do that. We start having a conversation with them. Once the conversation has passed the point where they say, well, yes, ZynBit is something that I think I could use it. There's something interesting about it that I'm looking at, that I'm willing to look at. The sales process for us stops. It shuts down. Now we go into what I really would talk about now, which is the customer experience. They're not handed off, but they're transferred over to the customer experience engine we built here. And they're not SDR reps. They're more like concierges. And these concierges walk them through the proof process, the trial process, the demo process, whatever that proof source the client needs, and then walks them through a process and makes it very easy for them to buy. Now, there's a couple caveats here. We have we're an inexpensive solution on a per user basis. We are software as a service. So there's some caveats there why that model may be more conducive to what I'm doing. But that's kind of the structured model that we've created, and we've been growing steadily over the last 2 years.
Okay, so just make sure I understand. So instead of having your SDRs doing your outreach, or your least experienced people doing outreach, your entry level, is you've got a strata of more senior people.
Yes.
That are doing some form of proactive outreach, but they're also responding some to inbound interest as well.
Yes.
Okay. And so they will work with the prospect through the education phase, we'll say, until such time as the prospect says, hey, I'd love to see a demo.
Yes.
And then they hand that off to your
customer experience team,
who then says, okay, we're going to shepherd you through, as you said, the proof phase of this. And interesting. So what do your customers say about that?
Well, our customers say, we like this so much. As a SaaS customer, can we do a 3-year deal with you as opposed to a 1-year subscription with you? I mean, they are incredible. Number one, they love the fact that it's not the heavy push on the front end for the close for the sale. They love the fact that they're given the ability to understand and be educated about the solution and get provided insight and all those things we're talking about. But then they're provided a team that is there to help them with how could you say the knobs and the dials of actually making the proof source work for them. And there's not a heavy pitch there. There's not a big, not every conversation ends in a value proposition or a discount conversation.
So what do you call the people that do the front end?
People that call it the salespeople.
All right, salespeople. So
Right.
salesperson has no involvement then once it's handed off?
No. Unless it gets, because of the way our deals, unless it has to go back to the process of information. If more team members are brought in, if there's many of our clients, because we're built upon Salesforce, have multiple divisions working in their CRM. So we may bring over a large organization, and we bring over the sales organization, and they work with us for about 6 months, and then someone over there, because we've created a referral process, not only for external customers, but for internal customers, where they come back in 6 months and say, well, this has been working great in sales. I want to make a presentation to our service team, or I want to make a presentation to our customer success team about why they should be using ZynBit. And then that is thrown back over to the transom, because now we're back in the informational and the persuasion and that type of conversation. And then once that's done, we go ahead then and again manage the process very methodically through a trial/demo process, where they're able to go ahead and kick the tires and light the fires. And what we found is that when we work that process, when we've tuned the process specifically toward the large enterprise customer, not only do our close rates go up, but the links of the links of the subscriptions we have go past 12 months into the multi-year deals. And then number 3 or C or letter C or wherever I am is that what we have there is we have the ability then for internal and external referrals, which really is, when it comes down to, I think, SaaS and the future of how people sell it, is the holy grail. Because I think that we've all had referrals, in whatever we're selling, whether it be copiers or real estate or whatever it is. We know when we get a referral from a satisfied customer what that means to our pipeline and to our forecast. So by building an engine that naturally that's the outcome, we found a great deal of success.
Okay, so and one thing you've written, then just sort of follow maybe the last question on this process part, is you'd written somewhere that the telephone's dead for salespeople. So what did you mean by that?
I think it's dead first off, I think cold outreach, whether it be telephone, phone, snail mail, knocking on doors, I think that's dead. I think the ability to pick up the phone and to figure out when this C-level or this C-level of the problem or whoever is going to be on the phone, some people call it, your dream customer or whatever, getting that person on the phone or getting that person to read my email, that's going to be the thing that opens the door to my process. I think that's dead. And I think it's dead because the technology exists now where I don't have to answer the phone and I don't have to read your email. I don't have to do any of those things. And we've noticed over the past couple of years, I know when I started knocking on doors and making phone calls, 50% of the doors would be, the knocks would be answered. 50% of the calls would be answered. They wouldn't go straight to voicemail. Now it's 1 in 20, 1 in 30 that you actually get a live person either on the phone or you're actually able to walk into a business and talk to someone.
So what's the alternative to? So what do you recommend? What's your team do? What do your salespeople do if they're not using the phone? We all know the stats. The phone is, as you just said, it's more problematic than ever.
Right.
So what's the alternative? What should companies be doing?
Well, that's a really good question. So it depends upon what widget you sell. I mean, for us, and again, this is, building it in a SaaS model where we are built upon a platform, we interact with people that are already engaged in the platform. Our platform is Salesforce. So we immerse ourselves in the Salesforce communities. Every major Salesforce user group across the country, we are in contact with, both electronically and physically. We fly out all over the country to Salesforce user group events, which aren't paid for by Salesforce, but they're run by the local user groups. And we not only make appearances, we provide insight that has nothing to do with our widget, whatever we sell. That we go above and beyond. We do the research. We go ahead and provide best practices in order to help our core customer, which is a CRM administrator, on how to effectively do their job the best way they can. And by engaging in those communities as a content, as an insight provider, we found a great, the level of our leads, number one, is drastically improved. But number two, the level of our referral opportunities, even for people that aren't at this point interested, or maybe they're using a competitor, maybe they're contractually obligated to do something else. We've had people where I've been in, at Lake Tahoe at the Salesforce user group, and we did a presentation there called Houdini Administrator, how to be invisible to your salesperson and how to get your salesperson to love Salesforce, right? And by providing that directly to an audience of Salesforce administrators, we had people there who said, I can't do anything right now. I don't have any budget. I don't have anything else. But here's a person I know in Texas, because the Salesforce community, they know each other. They have a huge user community. Now,
so it sounds like what you've done, though, it's hard to know the full extent without knowing your entire mix, is that you've personalized your lead gen in a way that most companies don't. I mean, you're not just saying, hey, it's pure content, we're going to publish pieces and so on, but we're being really proactive to go out and actually meet people, not just send them articles and post articles on blog. We're going out and meeting people that are influencers within the community that we serve.
No, and I think I think that's exactly what we're doing. And I think even though it's really good for our model, which is built upon the platform, I think there's lessons to be learned in whatever product or service that you're out there providing. Case in point, I'm dealing with a customer right now who is a legal services provider. They are a provider of discovery services to law firms across the country.
Sure.
Working with them, understanding one of their models is providing, again, in-person seminars in local cities for law firm administrators to come in and to learn about what's going on in the discovery world. Not only the technology, which is what they're selling, but also the best practices, the legal ramifications, the rule changes, all of those things that happen. They spend the time understanding and realizing that. It's kind of like when webinars first came into being, or that kind of communication first came into being, as very product focused. It was you could always expect the end of the webinar to be a 15-minute pitch upon why your solution is going to work. Our content and the content that we see working out there the best, at the end of the presentation, if I don't have people asking me, what do you sell? This is great. I love it. I'm going to use it. I've recorded it. I'm going to share it with everybody, but I still don't know what you sell and what are you getting out of this? Then I haven't done my job, because I think that is the way to get people actively interested in what you're doing. It's almost like the anti-pitch. It's if you think of a pitch being the elevator pitch when you're in the elevator and you pitch them for 30 seconds, the reverse of that would be to have an actual conversation with a person in that elevator, and at the 11th floor, when that door's open, that person turn to you and say, this has been a really great elevator ride. What do you do, by the way? Where do you work? Well, having, actively reaching out and having that connection.
Sure. So, all right. So next question then. So like this. So you've sort of turned the model on its head a little bit, inverted the pyramid, let's say, in terms of a typical sales structure, at least in a SaaS environment. And so you've also then written extensively, then sort of a logical outgrowth of that is that, hey, commission plans are bad the way that they're typically used. So you had a multi-part article about that on LinkedIn. So, right. I mean, you look at sort of your structure and say, okay, yeah, you'd want to compensate people differently. So let's just start sort of the big topic. I mean, commission plans, I know, you generated a lot of comment when you wrote that. I presume you haven't changed your mind.
No, and to answer your no on those comments, I am still not a Marxist. That's although I was accused thereof of being a Marxist. But no, for commission plans, well, I'll just give you, for instance, of what we do internally. We have our employees, whether they be developers or customer concierges or salespeople, are paid a very aggressively competitive base salary, but they're also paid a bonus upon revenue. A revenue bonus, a quarterly revenue bonus. And it is based upon the entire organization's revenue. So customer success has skin in the game when it comes to the sales process and the prospecting process.
Sure.
Prospectors have skin in the game to make sure that they're moving people through the pipeline that are actual customers, that are people that are really interested and are not just throwing flotsam over the transom in order to go ahead and make a particular number.
Actually qualified. So what you're saying is in your model, and unlike, so again, the inversion of regular SaaS model where SDRs, quote unquote, qualify prospects. I mean, they qualify them to a degree, only to the degree they might be qualified to have a demo, but you're actually doing actual qualification with your sales team.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Actually, yes. And we have had, your qualification process is working well when at the end of the initial meeting, you tell a customer or a prospect, I don't think you're ready for us yet. Or you haven't, because I think that's a sign of a good qualification process, because the point of qualification is not to qualify people in. It's to go ahead and qualify people out. Because all of us within sales, we've all had that conversation, in our past where we've wasted the conversation on the wrong person, quote unquote, or I'm doing air quotes while we're talking, but the person that wasn't the decision maker, or the people weren't ready, or it wasn't a fit. So at the very beginning, by qualifying those people out and then keeping them in some type of nurture marketing communication where they say, when you are ready for us, when you have met that level, we definitely like to talk to you, but here are some things you can do in the interim in order to get ready. We do have that conversation. We have that conversation with clients, and it's interesting. And it's something, invariably they're ones to say, well, what do I need to do to get ready? Or what's the metric you're looking at that you're telling me that we're not ready for us? And we're very transparent in that. Well, you haven't done this with the application yet, or you haven't instituted this level of adoption yet, or you haven't incorporated it as this part. And here are ways you can do that, and we can assist in that to help you do that. Here's some content, here's some best practices. But you definitely have to get ready. And I think in the current model with SDRs, I think you're exactly right. And again, I don't blame the SDRs. I don't want anyone to say that, it is a hard job out there trying to talk to people.
Absolutely.
And the numbers show it. And the numbers show, SDRs, it's a high stress job. Sure. It's a job there's a lot of turnover, and it's because it's a lot of effort for sometimes very, very little reward. Okay.
So that's going to lead to two questions I had. So one is, specifically that one, how's your turnover? And then the second one is really perception of the team in terms of, the collective, the feeling of being in it together. Do you have you really got that? Have people really bought into it? So let's start with the first one.
Good question. So we've had in the last 2 years, we've had one turn, of the people we've added, and we've been increasingly adding people as we go through 2 years. We've had one person turnover, basically.
So percentage-wise, 1 out of how many?
1 out of 20.
Okay. All right. Wow.
So. But I will tell you, our hiring process and again, that's the second part of it. The process that we engage in, we're definitely, the very first thing we look is, do we have the right people? And if we have the right people, if we're talking to the right person, if this is the person who gets it, quote unquote, if this is a person who understands it, who understands what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish, it's almost to the sense that the position can be created for that level of person. I'd much rather have a team of people that are the right people and try to figure out the right places than have all of the right places and trying to stick people in those right places.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty standard kind of thought. But in the practice of
no, I don't. I disagree with that. I mean, I think that it's unusual for people. I forget what the quote was I saw recently, but saying, if I had a choice between skills and character, you need both. But if I couldn't get one, I'd take character before skill. And that's sort of what you're talking about, right? Is you want to find the fit for the people in your organization, rather than hiring somebody because they've got some unique skill set that, even though they could be objectionable as a person.
No, and here's the philosophy around that. We talk about our organization, and when you read that multi post thing I did on LinkedIn about commissions, then none of that works if that person at the very beginning doesn't understand that and doesn't believe in what you believe in that aspect. If you're trying to take a person who has been living, who has been a commission-based salesperson for a great number of years, and then forcibly change their level of compensation to a different model, that's going to be a problem. You're going to have a problem if you bring people on, and their first reaction to something outside their wheelhouse is, well, that's not my job, or that's part of John's job, or I don't know how I could help with this because it's not something that I do.
Hopefully, they've self-selected during the interview process because you've made that clear.
Well, and that also is part of we do a very interesting way of bringing people on through the process. A lot of it is referral. A lot of it is, when we brought 2 people on very, very recently, and it was a much longer process. We did use a sales recruiter to help bring us candidates. But what we were looking for in the candidates were a little bit different than would normally be looked. And that's because the SDR, quote unquote, the SDR position was a little bit different. We weren't interested in people that would be, we weren't interested in people that were interested in telling us how many meetings they booked for their account manager yesterday.
All right. So last question that we have time for here.
Sure.
We'll a lot more we could talk about. So what are the metrics then that you use to evaluate your team members?
Well, that's a very good question, because some of them are hard metrics and some of them are soft metrics.
So let's just start with your salespeople, and then we'll talk about your concierges. So salespeople, they're just bringing people up to the point of being ready for a trial or demo. So what's their key metrics?
Their key metric is, I didn't call it a SQL, the SQL conversion to actual sale. The ability when they bring something in, when they bring a lead in, and you take a look at what they're doing and how that converts to an actual sale, that's the main metric that we're interested in. So,
so you're terming an SQL when they hand it off to the customer experience team.
Yes. Before that, it's all MQ. Yeah, it's before that, it's all. But when the actual salesperson is interacting with it, it is an SQL, and that conversion rate is incredibly important.
Okay. And then for your customer experience team, what metrics are they held accountable for?
2 metrics. The first is the other half of that metric, which is the SQL to conversion, which they're also marked on. If you have 10 SQLs and you're only converting 2 of them, we identify and we look at through our management and the coaching of the reps and the coaching of the concierges, what's going on. What's the reason we're having this issue? Is it garbage in, garbage out? Is it good stuff coming in and we don't know what we're doing? That kind of metric. And then the second metric is upsell and referral. The second metric is upsell and referral, because at the end of the day, the concierge is, they're responsible. They're responsible for they will be responsible eventually for the lion's share of the revenue from that particular client, because they're the interaction point from that point forward.
So including during the implementation phase. So they're basically customer success as well.
Exactly. We call it CX, but the reason, but they are definitely the linchpin for customer success. So they're.
So yeah, I was going to say, so one of the ironies to some degree is then, and this is very different from the traditional SaaS model, is that your quote unquote closers are actually your customer experience team.
Well, that's exactly, because because when you think of it, listen, every good sales book I've ever read has told me that I shouldn't have to ask for the deal if I've done everything up to the point the right way, right? Everybody from, I don't know, whether it's Zig Ziglar to Mike Bosworth to Neil to spin selling, they're all like, if you have done everything you need to do up to that point, there shouldn't be a point where you have to ask for the sale. It should be just a natural progression. Well, the natural progression of that is that, if you go that one step further, is that you shouldn't even have to have a salesperson at the end of that process, because the natural progression of the interaction from the point of the customer experience from the concierge is that, of course, the proof source is there. Your experience with the organization has been such that it is in our benefit to do business with you, ergo, sign the contract.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as I like to say, and I've in my books, is that salesperson's never in the room when the customer makes the decision.
Correct.
So much for the closer. All right. Derek, good stuff. Tell folks how they can learn a little bit more about you and ZynBit and connect with you. Well,
fantastic. Well, ZynBit is, you can always take a look at us. We're built upon the Salesforce platform. You can find us at www.zynbit.com.
That's Z-Y-N.
Z-Y-N-B-I-T. That's Z-Y-N-B-I-T. Also, you can find me as well. I have a LinkedIn profile, Derek Wyszynski, W-Y-S-Z-Y-N-S-K-I. You can find me there. I also am on Twitter at Real Sales Advice, one word, Real Sales Advice. You can find me there with my my Twitter feed. And then I do have just a collection of all the blog posts and some of the cartoons that I do. The 7 a.m. sales meeting cartoon I do on a weekly basis can all be found at realsalesadvice.com. And that's just kind of a clearinghouse for all the content that I do that people can see.
And yeah, people should go there. Derek is prolific. So, and yeah, to his credit, and what I like to see is that, it's different. Somebody's thinking about something in a different light and different perspective than just, follow the steps as most people seem to be doing these days. So, well, good. Derek, thank you. And we'll have you back on the show again.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Andy. It was a pleasure.
All right, friends, thank you for spending this time with me today. Make sure you come back, join me again for the next great episode of Accelerate. Till then, if you get a chance, appreciate it if you go to iTunes, wherever you listen to this podcast, and leave us a review and subscribe. Appreciate hearing from you, what we can do to make this a better experience for you. So thanks again for joining me. Until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.